Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Joining me on the DevReady Podcast today, I have Shantanu Bhattacharya. Thanks for joining me, Shantanu.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for inviting me over.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So I'll let you do an introduction of yourself because I will stuff that up completely.
No, that's perfectly fine. So I am Shantanu Bhattacharya. I am founder and CEO of Siometrix and have been in the space of data security and identity protection for some time now. And we have a completely different way of addressing data security and identity protection. We have a 360-degree view of the data when the data is actually residing anywhere, which means that we are able to figure out any angle of access that the attacker can try to get to the data. So we sort of solidify the operating system itself. So we modify the operating system and we make it strong for any organization to protect their data.
Okay, so what got you into this space to begin with?
Yeah, so I have been in the IT industry for around 30 years now, of which 25 years were in cybersecurity. I started with development of the TCP/IP stack itself when the TCP/IP stack had to be bought and it wasn't coming free with the operating system.
Okay.
So I saw the internet actually grow, or rather, sort of flourish.
Yep.
So we actually, as an interesting point, the first website which was there on the internet was actually called www.com.
Oh, okay, so it didn't have an actual domain.
No, it didn't have an actual domain.
I didn't know that.
That's how the internet started. And so I was there right from the beginning trying to secure internet. At that time, cybersecurity was much more rudimentary as compared to now. And nowadays, anyway, cybersecurity has, got wings everywhere because everything has a computing element to it. And so I then, from the TCP/IP stack development, which actually won about overall 42 international awards.
Oh, well.
During my tenure, it was around 17 international awards. And then we moved on to PKI, Public Key Infrastructure Technologies. I was the chief architect for that, and we developed the technology which was used by the US president and the Belgian president to sign their electronic signature bills to make it a legal tender, because it wasn't a legal tender before then. So that's what I did, and then I moved on to various different consulting companies and things like that. So currently I am in Canberra, and in Canberra I actually help various different federal government agencies with cybersecurity, consultancy, and those kind of things as well. So,
working at that core level, you'll have a deep understanding of how everything works. So
yes.
I'm just remembering PKI from my university courses about encryption and operating system classes that I took. So having that deep knowledge obviously allows you to help to understand the possible threats and the vectors that are happening at the moment. And I can imagine from those very early days, the cybersecurity was just make sure your password's not easy to guess, because there wasn't much chance for attack. There wasn't a sophistication there. As we've seen over the past few years, there's probably a lot more sophistication due to the ability to create bots very easily. AI is coming in, which can help you iterate quicker on things and try and find flaws more automated. How do you, probably two questions here, how do you keep up with trying to find these zero-day exploits, which are things that are there that people are just finding, and are trying to understand how they're trying to attack?
Yeah, so very interesting question you have asked about zero-day attacks, because Zero-day attack is a cat and mouse game, and you can't actually win there because the more software you develop, more zero-day attacks there are. So what we do, on the other hand, is we don't actually try to go after that cat and mouse game. What we do is, like I said, we actually have a 360-degree surveillance of any access to the data because we are more focused on data protection. So what we do is we make sure that whichever way from the operating system you try to access and get to the data, we are able to be a sentry on that point and sort of protect against unauthorized data access. Let me actually give you a little bit more detail. So basically what happens is when you actually have, let's say, admin access. So let's say suppose I am an attacker in your network and I have admin access. Normally what you would think is you have actually lost the game because I've got the admin access, I can do pretty much anything in your network. But what we do is if you actually go back to the basics, when you try to access any data, then you don't only require a user access control, but you also require a device and a software to access that data. So what we do, and admin access is just one user access control. And what we are doing is we, on top of that, we also check whether the device is authentic and the software which is actually authorized to access that data. So that way what happens is, even if I was in your network with admin access, I don't automatically get access to the data that you have protected so dearly. So we are providing additional layers of security to the operating system itself, and therefore, we don't have to play in the cat and mouse game on the zero-day attacks that much. We do have to focus, we do have to patch and everything, but our main goal is to actually have a 360-degree surveillance and sort of protect that way.
So at a technical level, I'm guessing you're running your software sort of like at the kernel level to have low-level access across the entire operating system to then track request versus the software. So you've got three objects you're checking to ensure something is allowed to access what they're trying to access, not just credentials of the admin allow you to get everything.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. So I'm guessing a lot of people that are listening may not know what that kernel access is. I've made a video before just talking about it in relation to the CrowdStrike issue that came up a few months ago, because that was running at the low-level kernel access, but they had a coding problem, which we won't go into. But did you have trouble, this is just me asking as a technical thing now, did you have trouble getting certification from Microsoft to get code allowed to run at the kernel level? Because I know there is a process you have to go through.
Yeah, so there is a thing called as code signing. So at the kernel level, if you have to execute anything and you have to provide it to a customer, then you definitely have to do the code signing. So yes, there is a signing method.
Is it just a signing, or is there like a verification that Microsoft has to go through to check it?
So it is the certificate which you used for signing has to be authorized by Microsoft.
Yeah, okay, yep. So we've got that for a product that we're running, so we've got a certified installer. I thought there was some actual steps that you had to go through. I didn't realize it was as simple as that.
There are steps which you have to go through, but they are pretty much streamlined for people who are creating software of this kind. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So with your current focus, you mentioned you're helping a lot of federal agencies. Do you focus more on the government side, or are you sort of working on smaller business as well?
Yeah, so I actually do both sides of things. The reason I do small and medium businesses is because in small and medium businesses, one of the things they get lost quickly with is how to handle cybersecurity.
Yep.
Because when they try to handle cybersecurity, there are so many tools which are available to figure out which is the right one so that they get the maximum bang for buck is a difficult thing. And that's where I actually help the small and medium businesses in that space.
Okay.
In terms of helping with the government, depends on the government contract that I have at a moment. And so I then help them set up the secure processes and things like that, in addition to doing the security architecture.
Yeah, because it's not just installing the software and having the monitoring, it's processes and procedures that need to be followed, because as everyone always says, the weakest part of any chain, it's the weakest link. So if there is a password that's written on a sticky note somewhere, that's going to be a big problem. It doesn't matter how good the processes are and how good the software is.
Absolutely. You are on the money there.
So what is some of the processes or the steps you start when you go into a business? What are some things that people should start looking into or understanding about where their possible threats or failure points may lie?
Yeah, so let me actually give you a very stark kind of reality.
Yep.
So what happens in small and medium businesses is these small and medium businesses actually have their own mobile device generally, which they use for official emails as well. And then they have, home network sometimes connecting to the official network. And the interesting part is nowadays you have got everything smart, right? You've got a smart fridge, you've got a smart fan, you've got a smart, light. And when you have these actually surreptitiously connect to the internet. And so if you are not careful, very easily you can actually have a big gaping hole in your network. And that's the kind of thing which I actually start with an organization to actually understand where their IT systems are. And so where are their exposures? Because if we don't know where the exposures are, we won't be able to fix them. So my first actually exercise is to go through the awareness kind of process, and awareness on both sides. I get aware about where their systems are, and they get aware about what are the risks which they are exposed to. And then we decide as to what is the best way of mitigating those. Okay.
So on that, say, home network side, I know there are a lot of flaws and a lot of security issues with IoT devices. So it's a very large emerging area because they're becoming more prevalent. Like you mentioned, there's smart fridges, smart fans, smart lights. But if everyone starts installing smart downlights, and if they're trying to cut costs and they're going to AliExpress and buying some brand they've never heard of, I'm not saying that may be bad or good, but that's probably has more likely a chance to have issues in their protocols or their software compared to buying the Arlo Connect or the Ring cameras, which are a bigger company, have a lot more scrutiny at them. Because they're a bigger name, they get attacked more. So they have more things in place to try and attempt them. From my experience, is just something as putting all those IoT devices on their own subnet in your network the way to go around it?
That is the first basic step, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yep, I think I'm going to have to do that now. I knew that was a problem, but I've just never actually spoken to anyone about it, so I'm confirming that. So if there are... So what for people listening, so what these devices will do is they connect to the internet, they push data back to servers to either allow you to remotely access the feeds or the data points that they're being collected. But because they have holes, they allow someone else to go in. So I'm sure we've all seen articles online where a random person is looking through a baby monitor or a webcam, and that's a problem in the software allowing that feed publicly without having those checks and balances. And then that becomes a problem for an organization, because if they can get into your network at home, which is unsecured through any means possible, then when you're connecting to your home Wi-Fi and then connecting to your work network, either through the smart devices or your laptop, someone will now have access through your devices like a bridge. And that's where these problems come up.
Absolutely. You are right on the money. And what generally ends up happening is the most, you know, unsuspecting area, like sometimes in, government departments, there is a lift which has software in it. So
Yeah.
that can get attacked as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
basically, and if you actually have CCTV camera on your home, then even in that you can actually get attacked.
Yeah.
So the places where you don't think, those are the places which needs attention.
Yeah. Okay. So for businesses, what are sort of some of the key things they need to do? If they outside of this home network issue, which is another vector that's a bit more difficult for them to control because they can advise things to their staff, but they can't mandate. What are some of the things that need to be looking at inside their business or inside their network? I'm guessing step one will be have like an IT support or a network person that have some understanding, not do it yourself.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Very true. That somebody needs to actually figure out, first of all, where their data is. So if you don't know where your important data is or critical data is, you can't protect it. So first step is to actually identify where all your data is. Second thing is that many of these small organizations use a lot of software on the cloud. Today everything is available on the cloud.
Yep.
And when you go and buy a software on the cloud, you are exposing yourself to that cloud software. If you are uploading some data there, then obviously you should be mindful of what data you are uploading. And sometimes just by accessing that from your network, you are also increasing the exposure there.
Yep.
So actually these are the kind of things which people need to look at from the business side of things as well, to make sure that they are covered from all angles.
Yeah. The analogy I like to use is if you're building a house, every door and window is a vector like for an attack. But if you, every time you sign up for a new piece of cloud software, you're putting a new window on your wall.
Exactly right.
And then that window's only going to be as secure as that cloud company is.
Exactly right.
Yeah. I think that's the best way for people to understand that, yeah, every time you go and sign up for something or use something that's not inside your physical network that is protected, hopefully, you are now opening yourself up to more potential risk. Not necessarily an attack, just the risk increases.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting because everything is cloud-based now. So there's not much software that runs locally. The only software that I can think of that runs locally for myself is my coding tools, and even then they connect to services to do things, and there may be some video editing.
Only the operating system is.
And that too, yeah. There's not much else except for Word, and even that Word's connecting to like OneDrive or SharePoint, so it's still doing a hop.
Exactly right.
It's interesting times. Are you finding that are you having trouble trying to keep up with the sort of like on the ransomware side and a lot of the phishing and the sophistication of that?
Yeah, so what we are therefore, very important question, and that is why what we focus on is try to get away from that rat race.
Yep.
So, for example, we talked about the 0-day kind of thing. Yes, it is important to be protected against 0-day, but you can't do that because
It's impossible.
you buy new software and then you don't know where the vulnerability is in that new software. Because if you go and do detailed vulnerability analysis for each software you buy, then you won't be using the software. You will just be doing vulnerability.
You just be doing analysis and nothing else.
That is exactly right. So you can't be in that kind of race. So what we try to do all the time is have a ticker which says that, no, this seems like a cat and mouse game. So we need to get away from that. And what is the way to get away from that? And then sort of focus on that and try to build a solution around that. So that then makes it much easier.
Yeah, so you're trying to put up as many guardrails as possible, but it's more on the monitoring of the data, because people will get in at some point, but if you're making sure the data is secure, it's unavoidable. So the cat and mouse game that Shantanu is talking about is sort of like that Whac-A-Mole game where the crocodiles pop up and you have to hit them on the head. But the problem with zero day is, I saw an article, I think it was last week or the week before, there was, I can't remember if it was Claude or ChatGPT 4, it was able to find a zero-day exploit in, I think it was Postgres SQL or MySQL, one of those SQL databases that had been there since the very first release, and which is 10 years. Just no one had found it yet.
Exactly.
So that's the Whac-A-Mole thing. It's, you're trying to find a needle in the haystack, but you don't know where the barn is. You don't know how many barns there are. So it's impossible to try and factor for everything. But if you can set that zone around your data, that's the critical thing to your business. It's not, can they get into my network? Let them in if you can protect everything else.
Exactly right. Exactly.
But yeah, you don't want free reign either. You don't want to give everyone the keys. So
right.
Is phishing one of the bigger problems that you're seeing outside of just those exploits that are in the IoT and networks?
You are actually hitting the nub on most of the important problems, and this is another one, because humans are the weakest link.
Yep.
Because what happens is, just imagine, let's say if you have a 2-year-old kid or somebody and you are coming to office, and when you come to office, your wife rings up and says that, your kid is actually ill and you need to take him or her to the hospital. So that is true when wife is calling you. When if somebody else called you and did exactly the same thing, you will still be emotionally as much perturbed before you realize that it was a scam.
Yep.
So one interesting thing that happened, so I was actually listening to one of the conference proceedings. Now, during one of the cybersecurity conferences, cybersecurity expert went and talked to a lady, and she was from a cybersecurity company, and she was saying, I can actually get your credit card, PIN. And he said, how would you do that? She said, okay, give me a second. So she calls his credit card company.
Yep.
And she has recorded baby crying.
Oh, okay.
And what she does is she plays that and she says that my husband is away and he's gone on a conference. And I am actually left with my 20-day-old baby.
Yep.
And I now have to make a payment for his milk, and I don't have the credit card details which I can use online. And that's how the bank person gullibly gave all the details to her, and there she was with all the details.
Yep.
She didn't have to do anything. So humans are the weakest links.
Yeah, and in that case, it's not even the humans that you're attacking, it's the supporting entities that are meant to be there to protect you as well.
Absolutely right. Because humans are humans everywhere, and that is what actually causes the problems.
Yeah.
So even in case of phishing attacks and social engineering attacks, most important thing is to protect the humans. That is right. But again, I come out of that Whac-A-Mole game by saying that even if the human actually made an error, we should be able to overcome that. That is how our system should be. So our system is not to just strengthen the social engineering or phishing attack protection, but we actually enhance that protection by having more access controls. So that way what happens is, even if they have lost the password or something like that, their device related details are not lost. And if we authenticate the device very accurately, then we can still stop that.
Yeah,
social
it's
engineering
having those multi-factors there to confirm. It's not just your password, it's a PIN and then a two-factor code, or the device identifier, the IP address of where you are. There's probably a lot of factors that go into it.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And IP address and MAC address, by the way, is very easily spoofable.
Yes.
So you can't use
we do that for testing. Yeah.
Exactly right. So
and there's lots of tools that you can find very easily to do this stuff. It's not just like developer tools, and I'm sure there's YouTube videos that'll tell you how to do it and how to run it. But a lot of that is as well for like the white hat hackers to help educate people to understand how to do these things.
Exactly right.
Yeah, it's similar to, I'm not sure if you've ever seen the videos online of the people that scam, like the scammers. Like there's a guy called Pierogi, his name is, where he'll pretend to be accept phone scams from call centers, but he'll set up a virtual machine on his computer to allow them in and set up fake bank accounts so they think they're getting money. But he scams them, and he can see them on their webcams, and he's telling who they are. So there's people out there that are trying to do the right thing, like yourself. He's doing it for entertainment and trying to understand and show these people, but you're doing it at a different level.
That is exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. So what are some key things a business can try and do before they sort of engage someone like yourself and just think, all right, I need to start with something? What should we be doing?
The first thing is to actually create a position called CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. There are still many organizations which do not have a CISO. So I'll put my hand up. Which then means, no, you actually are very knowledgeable from what
I'm technical, and we've got another person in our business that is very strict on things, so we're covered, but there's no role specifically focusing on that.
Yeah, so what therefore happens, even in your scenario, for example, is that people don't have the bandwidth probably to look at it completely. So it's not that you don't have the knowledge, but you need to put in the time to make sure that you are across everything within the business. So those are the two main things which are required. One is the person with the knowledge, and then the person who has the bandwidth to actually look at it and take stock of things and put the processes in place. So nowadays, actually in the US and also largely gradually in Australia, that board of directors are supposed to be aware of cybersecurity. So they can't wash their hands off when a cybersecurity incident occurs. They will still have to have that same responsibility of due diligence like rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
So it is important for organizations to realize that and have people who are actually looking at cybersecurity specifically. Once they know that, then probably they will be able to identify where a person like me is required, because I am not their full-time CISO.
Yep.
So if somebody needs to tell me what their problem is, because if I don't even know what the problem is, then it can't be solved. So sometimes what happens is, just to figure out what the problem is can take a long time if there is not an identified person. So that becomes the kind of challenge that is there.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know as a small business, so then it's hard to tell you what you need and what they need, but you're having someone in place to try and just spend, like you said, a bit of bandwidth to focus on these issues, or find someone who can assist with just the top 5 things that you need to do. Like, all right, you have a secure network, you have two-factor, do you have, I can't even think of what else it would be, passwords that are not common, not on what people call rainbow tables, that are easily guessable, things like that.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, is there a password manager in place? Yeah,
absolutely.
I use 64, 75 character long strings that the password generator just makes, and I'll never get into any service if I don't have my password manager. It's impossible.
No, that's right.
Even like A common thing that I've seen is those security questions that you get on top of that so you can recover your account, which is, what is your mother's maiden name? What school did you go to? What is your pet's name? They're very easy to find out if you know the person's account and just go and look at their Facebook profile or their LinkedIn profile, because people talk about themselves. So in my scenario, I even put random passwords in those. So I have to get into the password manager to look at the my notes on what the answers are, because I can't answer them. It's meant to be simple to recover your password, but which means it's also simple for someone to try and, who shouldn't be recovering it, recover it. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about when you're doing this stuff.
Absolutely. It's actually, again, comes back to a cat and mouse game. Every aspect of cybersecurity is a cat and mouse game, and that's how it ends up.
Yeah, and then every time a flaw will get plugged, a new one will get found, and then someone else will do it. The bad actors are always there trying to find things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For them, the best case is finding one of those zero-day exploits, because then that means everyone is possibly, like, it can be attacked by it. Where if it's a relatively new bug, or it's something that's based on the internet that's happening now, it's going to be only the ones that are updated or actively using it. It's not everyone that's possible. So there's a lot there it's impossible to keep up with. So that cat and mouse game it's not something you can go down. You can't just keep putting out fires, because you'll never stop.
Exactly right. And like what you very rightly pointed out as well, is we should be careful about what we put out on social media.
Yep.
Because that is now used as, material for the attackers, and the attackers then actually exploit that and
and it's probably more of a problem now with AI as well, since you can get people's online videos. So I make videos for work. Anyone can take those videos, put it to an AI bot, and generate a clone of my voice and pretend to be me on the phone call.
Absolutely.
It's not difficult to do that anymore.
It's not difficult to do that anymore.
And I'm willingly putting that out there. So there's a lot of things. It's not just, all right, the name of your kids or your wife or their birthdays that come up when you say happy birthday to them, which will then, all right, that's a PIN number or part of a password, or those combined together is a password that people use, or whatever it may be.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly
so
right.
It's just, being mindful of what you do and how you do it. Like, you wouldn't leave your house with the door open. Think about those sort of things as well when you're doing your work or setting up your infrastructure or services or passwords or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and as you rightly pointed out, that even when we try to do our work, like you are actually putting out podcasts and videos and things like that. So even during that, we are actually exposing ourselves. So it's becoming more and more rampant in terms of what is possible to be used for attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we need to always think of having a way to go out of that rat race and do something which will still hold when these attacks are executed.
And I think that goes back to your point earlier, which is, what's the most critical part of your business? Where's the value in the data? And make sure that's protected. So even if they do get in, you've still got that silo around the really important bit. And if you need help with that, I'm sure people can reach out to you or other people in the area. And then worst case, go to YouTube and understand, how do I separate networks or whatever it may be? And there's things online to follow. At least that's one step in the right direction, but it just makes it one step harder for someone to do something. That's all it is.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I actually, for some of the organizations, I actually do a virtual CISO kind of role as well. Yep. So it's not a full-time CISO kind of role, but virtual CISO kind of role where people can come and then I can actually guide them. If they can't hire a full-time CISO, then that can be an option.
Yeah, and that'll be invaluable because your wealth of experience and your technical knowledge. So what Shantanu mentioned at the start of the call was very, very early internet technology that everything is built on now, that we take for granted, that he was writing the code for, which would have been a very complicated code to write as well, because I'm guessing it would have been very low level, either C, or you wouldn't have been in assembly, but I'm guessing it was C, so it was very low level, very well done.
Assembly, combination of C and assembly.
You'd have to be at for that level to have the speed and memory efficiency. If anyone wants to reach out and inquire about some services or sort of your virtual CISO role and have an inquiry, how can they do that?
They can come to my LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I have actually a meeting in, you can request for a meeting
Yep.
on the LinkedIn,
Yes.
and then, we can start a
All right,
conversation.
not a problem. We'll put those links in the notes when we share out the episode. Once again, Shantanu, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Haven't spoken to anyone at this level before for the sort of security stuff, so it was a good conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present myself in your podcast and on your video.
Thank you.
Very much.
I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Bye.